Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Finance Committee. It is June 26th, 2024. It's exactly 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This is the small meeting room. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. And I want to welcome Patty Anderson here. She is going to be replacing Joanna with our next fiscal year. And Fred Guidi is in the corner. And I've been told that you are going to be appointed by Scott to replace the final year of Russ's time period. So thank you for joining us. We have the minutes of our last meeting. That was May 22nd, 2024. We were all present. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of, of May 22nd, 2024?
I move approval.
Roy,
Second.
do I have a second?
Second.
Russ? Any discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 0. And we have another guest here today, and that's Maya Golding. And I know Mira put together a packet of information. I don't know whether some people have it and some people don't. Does anybody need a copy? Fred, would you like a copy? You have one? Okay. Patty?
I think I have some. If you have an extra.
I have extra, so
Yeah, I'll take the paper. Then I know to zoom in
And
on
then
my little
just
phone.
pass
There
it
you go.
along.
Thank you.
Just
Okay.
move it, take it back.
And we'll pass this along too.
Take that and pass it along. That's new.
I'm okay.
Yeah, you pass it back.
Back down this way,
Surprises
Russ.
you have
Make a
for us.
circle.
I just, is this, are these copies of what was already in the PDF?
No, you don't have
It's
that.
additional.
Oh, this is additional?
Yeah.
Okay. And I just want to remind people, we just have 4 mics here today. That's not our norm. So if you want to ask a question or make a comment, et cetera, I'm going to ask everybody to really try to get close to a mic so everybody can hear, not just us, but the folks on the Zoom. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Maya, and you can.
Oh, no,
You-
no, that's separate. That's it. Yes, the other one, yeah.
Well, thank you for allowing me to attend your meeting. I'm the treasurer collector for the town. I did do a little introductory packet for you. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review it, so I don't have to review it or speak it verbatim. But I just wanted to introduce myself. So you saw the person who's doing the treasury work and the tax collection work. Our office is always open if you have questions or concerns. So in our office, it's myself. We have the assistant treasurer collector for the town, Cameron Scott. He's a great asset. And then we have our payroll administrator, Brian LaValle, who's just wonderful as well. Really great team. And now we also have Mira in our office. She's not associated necessarily with the treasury collection, but she's a great addition to our office. And so that's great. How do we like to proceed? Does anybody have any direct questions from the packet, or would you like me to kind of just go over some duties?
How would everybody like, I have a number of questions, but other people
I have a couple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would
How
you-
would people like to proceed? Asking questions first, or just giving a little broad perspective of?
You tell us. Yeah.
I think the questions are great because I think did everybody take a look at the packet?
Mhm.
Then I'm happy to answer any questions, so this can be productive and directed as to
Terrific.
what you'd like.
Terrific.
Okay, do you want to start, Paul?
Sure, I only have 2.
Yeah.
So, I love the fact that we made almost $1.1 million in interest. What is that money invested in? Is like short-term money market rates with check writing?
It's mostly money market accounts, and we have 1 CD. The library trustees have the the bulk of their monies in a CD that's earning a higher interest.
Right.
However,
It's
the,
very slow.
yeah, which is great, but because of liquidity and the things that we need, I've just been asking our banks for higher interest rates and they've been giving them. That really works well, especially if as interest rates begin to rise, you kind of say, hey, I'm getting this interest rate from here. So that's where it is right now. We don't at this time, no.
I didn't hear your question, Rich.
Asked about, there's a entity called the Massachusetts Municipal Depository Trust, an MDT,
Mhm.
that a lot of treasuries will use. It kind of fell out of favor for a number of years because the rates were so low. And now the rates are back up, they might have to pay the rates.
And I've actually considered maybe moving away from one of our banks that's kind of low to give us a higher rate. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's always something, trying to pursue a higher rate always.
Right, so there's no problem moving money from the money market to when you have to write a check.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
The other question on the collection rates.
Yep.
What happens when people don't pay? I know we control the real estate, but like, we don't control the car, right?
Right. So basically what happens, there are some steps that we can do where we can still collect the bill. So it goes out as the regular commitment and they have 30 days to pay.
Okay.
Within 2 days after that, we can issue a demand bill, which adds a $10 fee onto it and bills are mailed out again in an attempt to collect.
Okay.
After that, we turn it over to our deputy collector. And Kelly and Ryan is our deputy collector service. And what they do is they issue a warrant to collect the bill. So then they start attempting to collect directly from the taxpayer. And they do that. There's a first warrant and then a second warrant. And then the final step that they can do is market the RMV. So that usually catches everyone's attention. Additionally, we have our delinquent list. And within the last 2 years, we've been adding motor vehicle to the delinquent list. So I'm really thankful for all of the departments who use the list. So that's really been a great mechanism to catch some motor vehicle delinquencies.
So if I come in for something else, you pull my name and say,
Exactly.
Brown, you're a deadbeat, pass.
You're on the naughty list.
In transfer station, so.
Yep, and also, yep. So, and health department, and town clerk also use it for licensing. So that's a really great mechanism and, we couldn't do that without the departments really buying into that. So it's really helped the town. So I'm really appreciative of that.
Take this opportunity to point out a couple things about how they're on this one.
Yeah, could you use the microphone, Rich? I'm sorry.
Very compliance based, there's a lot of general laws, procedural things that Maya gets through attendance at the Collector Treasurers Association that has a great training program, for which she's certified now. But it's very compliance based and rules based. But one of the things that was important to me when I got here and Maya's been able to pull together, and we're always improving in this area, but is standardizing some policies and procedures. So everything that she does now has a practice associated with it that's documented. And it serves as a great training tool. So I think that was a great thing to have in place when our new assistant came on board, assisted in onboarding of that person and in others as well. So just want you guys to keep that in mind. It's very rules based, but there are some areas for policy decisions and she's done a good job of documenting that. I have more, but I'll tell you guys.
I do have one question as follow-up to Paul's. You say all the departments have bought into this, right?
Yep.
So is it automated in the sense that, hey, everyone's working from the same system, so the excise tax, the property tax, any other things that they're delinquent in automatically pop up, or is it a manual process where someone's got to kind of put it together?
Right. So it's a list that is an Excel spreadsheet. And so I created at the beginning of the calendar year.
Yeah.
And then it's located on our online through SharePoint.
Mhm.
So it's a live document.
Yeah.
So anytime someone pays and lets us know, bring us their receipt, send us an email, we immediately update the list live so that then they can proceed with their process.
Yeah.
So different departments use it different ways. They definitely either use the list and then mark things in their system, or they check the list as they're doing their process of trying to see if they can issue a license.
Yeah. Well, that's going back to what Rich said. It's good you have the process and the procedures
Right.
to follow. It just seems to not be critical.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have a piece of software,
Oh, it would
you
be
know what I mean,
wonderful.
that kind of integrates all this for you. I'm kind
Yeah.
of surprised towns don't have it because I'm sure we're not the only ones struggling with this kind of
Are you a
Uh,
software developer? Maybe you should do that.
Not anymore.
So one of the things Mia's been pretty good about, I mean, we all have things we would like to do. It's a matter of time and effort and priority, I guess, but she has been accepting of technology.
Yeah.
So a lot of improvements with Mia on board is our utilization of our financial management system.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too far afield, but for example, there's what's called a general billing program. So eventually what we're looking for is decentralized entries of cash receipts at departmental level get entered at that and goes through a workflow to get to Maya.
Right.
And obviously the cash has to get to her, the checks.
Yeah.
But that's an automation and it also allows us to do billing, for example, on our rentals and things like that and have a record all integrated into our financial management system.
Yeah.
And the big thing, and you don't have it in front of you, but Maya spends a lot of time on cash management activities, particularly as you might imagine, cash reconciliations is a big internal control for the town and making sure that they agree with what the accountant's ledger says. So she's got a whole workbook. It's all Excel based of all the reconciling activity of all the accounts. And we summarize it. You know, it's as automated as it can be, but it's still manual in Excel. And that gets reconciled to the ledger very timely every month. And that's how we know we've accounted for all the transactions. But that's a big area for us in the next coming year is to get that onto the cash, it's called the cash management module in our financial management system.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going.
And she
So it
used-
wasn't a new piece of software, it's a module that existed, you know, that could plug into your.
Yeah, and I've used that before in
Yeah.
my other community that I worked in, so
Okay.
I'm very familiar with it and really excited to get it going. I definitely love to implement technology or online payments and credit card.
It makes it
payments.
easier for everybody.
Exactly, and we figure out how to reconcile it on our side and make it work, so that everybody can have a better experience.
Great. Can you mention that on your online, you've done some work on credit
Yeah.
cards and
So with our
Online.
credit cards, we created it so that stickers can now take credit cards at the counter. That was a big move this year, which is really great. We also allow for building, town clerk, the building department, having that available to pay online is huge. That's really been heavily adopted. So at least $20,000 or more permit payments are being done online. So that's great. So that's just smoothing out the function of all of it. And additionally, we changed up our lockbox. So our lockbox is when people send in payments. If you notice on your tax bill, it'll have a Boston address. And when you send in your coupon and your check, and if it matches, it automatically processes for us. And then receive a file the next day that we upload into our system. What we did with this new lockbox is we have the ability to make decisions online for payments that are received. So if someone forgets to include their coupon and they just include their check, we can look at their check, figure out which tax bill they're paying and assign it to that tax bill, and it's done within a day. So it's really a great time save. Before they would have just rejected that and mailed it to us in the mail. And we would have, of course, dated the payment the date they received it. But it's really just a smoother function for everybody. So anything that we can do to increase that productivity and just the ease of processing, we're always willing to do.
Paul, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah,
You have a question?
I only had two.
I just have one follow-up. Can you tell me, is your department driving the process for like chasing down delinquent property tax owners? In other words, pushing it through maybe the
Yes. Yeah.
What's the right term? I'm sorry, my brain's relaxing.
okay.
You know, when you take the property from somebody, you know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
Foreclosure. I know. it's a lot.
Well, right, so the steps for all of that is after that May 1st due date, we are semi-annual, so our first half bill is due November 1, second half May 1st. After May 1st, we issue demand bills, which are again that $10 in an attempt to collect. Then in August, we'll send out letters to the people who have not paid their taxes still and say, hey, this is serious, you have to pay this or else it will go into tax title. If we don't get a response and it remains unpaid, then our lawyers who are Capola and Capola, they work on our behalf. They'll send out letters and say, hey, this is serious, pay your bill or else it will go into tax title. And so usually we have 30 to 50 people who end up not paying. And what happens is then we go through the process of creating an advertisement. It has to be advertised, the taking. And then 2 weeks later, we do the actual taking, which means that there's a lien placed on the property. Our lawyers do that for us. And then the status in our financial system is switched from real estate to tax title. And basically that means it's at a 16% collection rate instead of 14. And then that lien is placed. And this is where it's going to get tricky, and I'll be honest. The foreclosure process can occur within 6 months after that taking. You can start foreclosure process. There's been movement, and it started in Minnesota where a homeowner.
I wanted to ask about
Yeah,
that.
whose home, their property was foreclosed on, and I think the town earned $40,000 on the property, and she only owed $15,000 in taxes. And so she sued, and she was given the $25,000 back because it was unfair taxation. So that case has come to Massachusetts, someone sued a town. So this is really gonna be something we're going to have to consider moving forward, is how we will proceed with foreclosures. And also, I'm not sure if you're aware, but after a foreclosure judgment has been issued, there is still a year where the former taxpayer can go and try and have that vacated, so they could still try and pay it off and get the property back. So we're gonna have some things to think about, and nothing is set in stone yet. There's still a lot of legalities going on. There's legislature going before our body, and they're gonna try and change some of the rules about how we do things. So we're kind of waiting to see how it's all gonna shake out.
That's good. So you also said that you're chasing about 30, 40, so you're chasing about 0.5% of the tax
Right.
base. So is that good? It sounds good to me. Is that good compared to
And
other
actually,
towns?
good ref point, maybe we can look at that, was just handed out.
Yep.
This very first page. I like Maya's write-up, but I'm a little simplistic, and I want to have one spot, and I also want to give it to you on a multi-year. So this is the FY 23 tax levy.
Which I didn't include in my taxation form here because it turned to tax title, but Rich wanted to present this information.
So we billed 30,406,000 property
Right.
tax. That was the property tax levy for 23. Within the first year, Mayor's office collected 29,748,000. So this is by June 30th. So the bill went out, was due November 1, May 1. And through June 30th of that year, she collected 29, which is 97.84%. The other thing that happens, and we didn't mention, one of the key things she's done is working with the assessor, Colleen, to improve the transfer of the data from the assessing database through Munis, our software, into our tax bill, in streamlining that process and the validation that goes along with it. So that was good, but what Colleen and May have been able to do together is they get most of the abatements and exemptions that they know about credited on the bill before they go out, so that people don't have to come in separate and get it after the fact. We're not billing it, collecting it, and then giving it back. It's just right off the bill. Which is, I think, helpful to our taxpayers. But in any event, that totaled 115,000 for the year. And you'll note there's nothing in the second year, and there shouldn't be, but in a lot of towns you'll see that there are. The reason it shouldn't be is because you're required, by law, you have 30 days after the receipt of the tax bill to put in your request for abatement. And so we are enforce that, and Colleen does a lot of outreach to make sure that the people that she's aware of that ought to be getting abatements or exemptions are actually following through and doing that. And then we process them, and they're gone and they're done, and we don't have anything in the following year. And then finally, you see that transfer to tax title, which is just a small percentage. Those are what people that were in tax title in the prior year, and so what we call subsequent. So now this bill is also going into tax title. And then when you go to the second year, you see the balance of the outstanding levy as of June 30th was collected. So that's a cumulative percentage. So Maya got on the FY 23 levy 99.2% collection rate. On abatements, in total was 0.38, the 115,000. That's not collectible because it's an abatement or an exemption.
Yep.
So really what you're talking about that she didn't collect was about the 70 and the 57. So that's about $127,000.
Less than 0.5%.
0.42%.
Yeah.
Of our tax levy. And interestingly enough, if you were to take the transfer to tax title and the abatements, that adds up to about just around $200,000. And you may not recall this, and I don't get into it today because I don't want to take away from Maya's spotlight, but when you start talking about the budget, you might recall in the budget summary that we do, we always have an allowance for abatements and exemptions in our calculation of the tax levy. That's about $250,000. So the total of the abatements and the total of the transfer tax, I was just a little bit under that.
Mhm.
And that's important because everything that we do on a budgetary basis is cash basis. This is the only thing that's accrual. The property tax levy balances it all out, but it's balanced out on the fact on what you're gonna bill. So to the extent you don't collect it, you're gonna be short, you have a structural deficit, so to speak, to the extent you don't collect it. But in our case, those things that make us not collect it, like tax title and abatements, are covered by that allowance or abatements and exemptions. So we're coming out to the positive.
Yeah, that's great. And I know I said this, asked this before, so is this a lot better than other towns? Is it?
That's a great question, and I don't really have a point of reference for it to be, but
Yes.
Rich has worked in a lot of other towns, so he might be able to answer
Yeah,
that.
and
What are the other towns? Are they a couple percent or?
everybody does a really good job on
Really?
collection. There's a couple that don't.
Yeah.
But they got structural issues. Like for example, and I don't mean to throw anybody under the bus, but it's been in the paper. But this is a long-standing history going back to the 50s when Route 6 was extended down Cape Cod. Harwich got bisected, right? North and South Harwich. And adjacent to the road highway that was extended, there are all these little pieces, parcels that became unidentifiable and became owners unknown. But they're part of the tax levy. So, and I'm just making up a number now. I don't remember the numbers, but 25 years ago, I was there helping with this, and it's still an issue. But they would have something like, if you had a $30 million tax levy, they knew there was $400,000 of owners unknown that they were not going to collect. So that was inherently a structural deficit. And this has never been resolved. So it's accumulation.
So that
So
shows.
you look at Town of Harwich balance sheet, you're gonna see that their tax, and of course, all those owner unknown parcels that have property tax value assigned to them get transferred into tax title like Maya does. Maya does it very timely. But over time, since it's really uncollectible because they don't know who to go after.
Yeah.
That outstanding tax lien receivable, it's just been growing every year and it's millions and millions of dollars. And here, Maya's done a good job, and I'll let you speak to it, but you got a balance of outstanding liens, and it's a relatively small number of folks.
Right. And we just had a big payoff today, so that was great. So.
Was that the lobster shanty?
It was.
I live near the lobster shanty.
Yep.
And I obviously saw the article in the paper,
Yep.
Provincetown Independent. And I could see that nothing was going on there for quite a while, because normally, obviously, they would be open for business at this time of the year.
Yep.
And I was wondering what was going on there, because just within the last couple of days, they've been doing some landscaping
Right.
work, and they've been putting up the tables, and they've been, yeah, and I was just wondering, so, and they owed quite a bit of money.
Yep, it was a $64,000 cashier's check. So that was a great collection.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so going back to the delinquent list, and I'm just referring to my notes because I don't remember these kind of numbers off the top of my head. But Mass General Law 40, Section 57, allows you to withhold licenses or permits because of a number of reasons, and one of them is being unpaid taxes. And the town adopted this, and it was last amended in 2019 at town meeting. And so again, this is a great example of the departments working together, the town clerk's office to start, like, you owe taxes, we can't issue these licenses. And then today we got that payment, and it's a process, but it's really a great mechanism. So I'm really happy and thankful for the other departments that are doing this work.
So are you finished? So I have a bunch of questions
Oh,
too.
boy.
There is a question.
So one of the questions I have is about the ramifications. So let's say I don't pay my taxes
Right,
and I go to get my beach stickers.
Yep.
And you said that information is available for anybody.
Mhm.
Would they tell me that I couldn't get my beach stickers?
correct. Unless you're in a payment plan with the town. And that's another thing, if people go into tax title, they can enter into a payment plan with us.
Mhm.
It has to be beneficial to the town. And so that's gonna be my focus going forward with ones, so that we really will get our monies. So if you are on a payment plan, you can get stickers.
Mhm.
So there is that allowance. And we have a few folks who are in tax title who are not on that list because of that.
Is there an interest charged if you're on a payment schedule?
The tax title interest is 16%. So
15,
that's
15,
16.
16.
16%, so that is on the balance
Mhm.
of, so everything. from the real estate bill commingles into one amount and is placed on the tax title, and that balance earns 16%. And so that's until they pay it off.
Mhm. Okay. And I have a bunch of other questions. Have we ever I shouldn't say over, have we ever taken a house, a property because of non-payment?
So before my time, the town took 2 properties,
Mhm.
and they
Yeah.
are across from Salt Pond, and there's each one half of each, there's 2 duplexes there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's one
I,
of each
I
half.
think I'm aware of.
Yep, so
That's
that
near
was,
me
I believe,
too.
in 2019, I believe.
Yeah,
And actually, they just foreclosed on a piece of land on Route 6, and that occurred in November.
mhm.
So those are the 3 that I'm aware of in the recent.
So I think the point I'll add there is Mayor's got a bit of discretion as the treasurer collector under the law. And, so for example, in issuing a payment plan,
Mhm.
she has some pretty stringent criteria. It's like, obviously, you're not gonna let the payment plan go in such a manner that you get the next year's bill and now you're gonna be in a bigger hole, right? So, this criteria that she goes through, but when it comes to foreclosure, generally that's a select board decision. And we don't have a formal policy on it, but we certainly have a lot of guidelines.
Mm.
And we're not looking to throw anybody out of their house.
If it's someone's primary
So
residence, they
occupancy, primary residence, all those types of things. But if it's a abandoned house that's not been lived in for years, you reach a point where that tax lien starts approaching a certain percentage of the total value of the
Of
property.
the house, yeah.
You might want to take action. So that's something every once in a while, May and I get together, and she'll get us a list and we'll talk about it and I'll talk to Jackie about it. And then,
move forward.
maybe we'll bring it to the select board
Mhm.
if it warrants it.
But to Mary's question though, bring up a good point. As long as they're paying the taxes, you can't do anything with the property. Is
Correct.
that true?
That's correct.
So I understand if someone's living in there, it's
Mhm.
primary residence, but at the end of my street, this house, no one's been in there for 10+ years.
Yep.
Somebody's gonna be paying the taxes.
Fair,
and
yeah.
The property is
Right.
gone to,
Yeah.
But as long as they're paying the taxes, there's nothing you can do,
As a tax collector, absolutely, there's nothing I could do.
other than maybe get the fire department to get them down the building.
Well, I mean, that's a whole nother process. I believe it involves building and all of that.
But even that's still could foreclose for tax purposes. You could take it by eminent domain.
Yeah, or some other things,
Mhm.
but.
Yeah.
That's not in my wheelhouse, unfortunately.
I don't know, it kind of looks nice. I thought finally overgrown.
I was gonna say, you can't see it from the street.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I was just curious, because
Yeah.
it looks like it's abandoned, but
right.
it's
If
not
someone's
on,
paying
it's not on
taxes,
the
then,
list,
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay,
How much do we spend on an annual basis for legal fees to do the work that you're discussing?
Off the top of my head, I think it's about 12,000 foreclosure. Per foreclosure could be 4,000. Now, when I have my lawyers send out the letter to collect, they will tell me how much that was, and that amount gets added onto the tax bill. So there's a lot of things that
okay,
are
okay.
added back onto the tax
okay,
bill that we
okay.
collect again into the general fund.
So that's not coming out of someplace else. You're,
Correct.
if it's costing us something, it's going onto the bill that those people owe us.
Yes,
We do have to appropriate it though.
I'm
We
sorry,
do have to appropriate
Oh,
it though,
oh.
because we pay it
as
first.
Yeah.
far as our budget is concerned.
yes.
And so I think your budget this year is like 20 grand. for
Yeah.
tax title.
Yeah, because each foreclosure, and we actually have a number of properties that are in various stages of that, and I need to chat with them to get an update. But each foreclosure costs approximately $4,000 to go from start to finish.
mm.
You might remember, when Mayas, I think it was probably when you started, she did a lot of cleanup of our tax liens and working with the tax lien attorney to get things up to date and get some filings done at the registry. So we had a year where we overspent the budget, but we made a transfer to cover it. But it's a matter of, one of the great qualities she has as a collector, she's staying on top of these things. Because they can get out of control. They keep growing and growing, and you don't pay attention to them. It becomes a bear after a number of years, to go back and figure this all out and address it. So staying on top of the business, so to speak, is really key. And so that's why it's really great that the town was supportive of that transfer in that year and then upping the budget to 20 grand. So we're able to stay on top of this year over year, as opposed to having things accumulate.
Another question, how is the personal property taxed, not allocated, but decided for everybody's that pays, how is that?
So personal property, there's two means for that. One is if a residence is not a primary residence, it's assessed, so it's to second homeowners. And I'm going to speak on what I know of this because it's more of an assessing. They're the ones who actually assess the tax and we just collect it. But from my basic understanding of the process, so if it's a second home and if you rent it year round and it's unfurnished, then you would not get that tax. However, if it is a second home, it's based on 1% of the building value solely. Say that again, building value solely, not the land, 1% of that at the tax rate. And then the second way to get a personal property tax bill is if you're a business and it's based on the stuff you have to do your
Mhm.
business, basically.
The levy is about $30 million tax levy, the personal property tax piece of that. So total tax levy, it's broken down between real estate and personal property. Of the $30 million plus or minus tax levy, only less than 300,000 is personal. The rest is all real estate.
Dennis, and you're right, what you
Yeah.
just said though is, if I had an empty building,
If you were renting it,
if I was renting.
if you were
it was
renting
empty,
property year round and
Yeah.
it was unfurnished,
unfurnished, there wouldn't be any personal property.
correct,
But if I own it and it's got property and it's a second home,
then you are taxed on what fills the home, yes.
so not have personal property, I should have a second home with nothing in it.
You have to rent it as well. Rent it out year round, I might add.
Rent out a house, there's nothing in it.
Well, like,
Got it.
if you rent out a property year round, usually your tenants have their own things, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a year round rental. So that is a way to get around it.
Okay, I have another question that has to do with the school system.
Okay,
And it's my understanding that all of the educational bills go to the regional operation in Orleans. And then they come back to the town hall to be paid, say, for the Eastham Elementary School. And I don't understand how that works and who approves what. Do we just get the bill and pay it when somebody else has approved it?
so that's a great question. That's more on the accounting side because the accounting portion of our finance team, they're the ones who approve bills as legally payable. So they have a process and Rich might be able to
So-
address this clearer.
And that's one of the key internal controls in a town, and we're pretty adamant on this. I think we execute it appropriately. But the town accountant is the only one that's able to put what's called a bill on what's called a warrant. And they issue a warrant to the treasurer for payment, and only the things listed on that warrant. We do a warrant every week. Only those things listed is what the treasurer is able to pay. So the accountant reviews and approves bills for payment, but the treasurer separately actually makes the payment, and
Mhm.
controls the cash. But in the case of the school, you're right, because we're in what's called a school union. The regional superintendent. Yeah, technically, it's the regional superintendent. I don't think she actually does in this case. They probably delegate it to a business manager or something like that. They get all the elementary school bills and they evaluate them for the educational purpose and that they're appropriate. And they maintain those records.
Do we have any ability to question, or we just get the bill and we
Sure.
pay it?
Well, then those bills come to the accountant and we have an ability to question them.
Why don't they come to us directly for the elementary school?
Because we wouldn't know what they're for necessarily. If it's just a regular operational bill, the school operation kind of understands that necessity of it. And the principals are dealing with the business manager and the superintendent on these types of things, but they have got their detailed budget and the school district maintains the detailed records. We just have 2 or 3 lines in our ledger to accumulate school bills, and they have all the detail that they have to do for financial reporting to this DESE.
Okay, it just seems like somebody else is taking care of it and then sending it to us versus us handling it
Well, it's not
ourselves.
too different from how a department works. I mean, we make our departments, when they order something, they get the invoice and they affirm to us that they received the goods or services
Oh, yeah.
and they're approving the bill. I mean, how would how does the accountant know what the fire department ordered or anything like that, right? So the bills don't go to the accounting office, they go to the departments and the departments do a validation process and then send them on a bill schedule to the accountant, who then reviews them, puts them on the warrant for Maya to pay.
But they don't do that in isolation, Rich, to your earlier point. individual elementary school is involved with the assessment of the bill, right? So somewhere the principal or somebody is saying, yeah, I
Right.
did, I
Oh,
did
they're-
buy that projector for this school.
The principal's office is, I'm sure, approving the bill, sending it to the central office, who then approves the
So that's
payment.
kind of the nod.
And then they record it at the region on their books and records, because they gotta prepare reports to DESI. And then, but they forward them to us, since they're technically our bills for
Mhm.
the actual payment,
Yeah, yeah,
which is different than the middle school and high school. Those are
Right. Oh,
actually
yeah.
regional
That's
district
regional.
schools.
yeah,
So they handle the payment of
right,
those
right,
there.
right. Yeah, I understand that. What is the Driver Protection Act?
Basically, that's a law that's on the federal level that says that any information on that, if you have access to the RMV information, which obviously has home addresses, names, date of birth, all of this private information, which is available on a motor vehicle excise bill, that information cannot be released to anybody except the person who's on the title of that bill. So if you were to come in and say, I need a copy of my bill, my motor vehicle bill, or I want to pay it, and I didn't know you by sight as your Mary Shaw,
Mhm.
I'd ask for ID to ensure you are who you say you are.
Mm.
So that is the difference in our office. All other excise bills,
Mm.
boat excise, or the real estate and personal property, those are public record, but motor vehicle is not. So we have
Yeah.
to follow that.
Mm. That-
Yeah, it's
that
for
process.
it's to protect people's privacy.
Mhm.
And my understanding is, historically there was a stalking incident and people got information they shouldn't have, and things happen. So not that we want to ever assume that anyone has bad intent, but just to protect everyone's privacy, we can't give information out unless you are on that registration.
Okay, and I have one other question. You have a comment in here, and I'm looking for it. Regarding you call it the Harper's payroll.
Harper's.
Harper's, yeah,
Okay.
Harper's, yeah. You say, which requires a lot of maintenance and setup.
Yep.
Is that something that needs to be changed? Is that a problem? Is that something that
no,
we could
it's not
get
a
better?
problem. Yeah, no, it's not a problem. Thank you for asking. It just means that if a new job type or a new part-time or anything that's related to payroll is created, it has to also be created on the Harper side. And then we also have to make sure it corresponds with Munis. So there's multi-steps just to make sure all the GLs and the account information matches so that it can find a home in Munis eventually. But it just takes a lot of maintenance, and when new
And
things are
maintaining
created.
any payroll system regardless.
I've just never, I've heard of Munis, obviously. I've worked with that a lot, but
Yeah.
I've
No, so
never
we
heard of
don't
Harper's.
use Munis for the payroll. I've used it in other communities. I'm not a huge fan. It has its pros and cons. But the big thing with Harper's payroll, it's a third-party payroll service. So the big thing for us, obviously the maintenance of it's important, because with any payroll system, you have to maintain who's in it, how they get charged, what their job codes are, things like that. And if you have turnover, people get terminated or retired, and you get new people coming, that all has to be updated. So you have practices and policies that establish that come from HR and go to Brian and Mayor's office, and Mayor supervises and oversees it. But so that you have to have a mechanism for that regardless, and you can use Munis, you can use Harper's, you can use a number of things, but the big thing for me, aside from all that stuff, is they're a third-party payroll provider.
Mhm.
And
Oh.
I have a lot more comfort. It's a sustainability issue, it's a backup issue. Worst case scenario, and nobody in our payroll operation or our treasurer's operation is available for one reason, we can rely on them to at least issue duplicate payrolls from a prior period. They do all the payroll tax filings and all that compliance work as well. Do they do the health insurance? They do the 1099, not 1099, the W-2s
Yep.
and, well, the 1095s, right?
Yep, they do all of that for us.
So
So
some, year-end tax filing reports, so
Mm.
that relieves that office from that compliance responsibility that typically I find over the years of doing this. Inevitably, a town's gonna have a problem with the IRS for those
Mm.
types of filings, and it's easier to avoid it. Usually then a lot, unless you're a bigger town, maybe a Barnstable. Maybe not even them, I don't know, but I'd say most every other town on the Cape and across the South Shore, if they're doing payroll in-house, they've got one person that does the payroll tax filings, and I just never felt comfortable with that.
Oh,
There
hi,
may not be an
Peter.
expert
Yeah,
either.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
440.
I ask a question on the tax collection rate?
Yes, of course.
John.
For 2024. Is that just a timing issue? Where the number of bills that issued 7,742 versus 2023?
Yeah, we're not done issuing 20 calendar year 24 bills yet. Because they can be issued up to 8 times a year, so it's kind of interesting the way that they're issued throughout the year. If that makes sense.
And that's the same thing on the vote side.
Vote excise is just once a year, and we don't have many, as you can see.
What's the big commitment? Is that like March timeframe usually?
February, yeah.
February.
The big commitment number 1 usually is anything. So motor vehicle, if you haven't made any changes and it's just the vehicle you've already owned the prior year, you'll get your bill. It'll be mailed out in February. If you get a new vehicle, trade something in, then you'll be caught depending on the time of year on one of those other commitments.
But the reason I mentioned that is that timing's important because when I think last meeting we looked at year-to-date reports for receipts, right? Compared to budget. If you're looking at something through December, right, and you say, wow, motor vehicle excise is very short. Well, the big commitment is the February, March commitment. So you would expect it to be. But I always compare it to, as I go through the year, the last couple of years at the same time, just to see how we're tracking related to that.
Joanna and Peter, do either of you have any questions?
Maybe you already covered this, Mary.
Sure.
I noticed on the material that the assessor or the treasurer has to keep track of 53 bank accounts. Is there any way we could make her life easier and get that to lesser? I'm sure Rich has got a reason for everyone.
The library is
mostly-
one of the culprits there.
I mean, honestly, that's not the hardest part of the job. There's a rhythm, and most of these 53 accounts don't see a lot of action. They just get interest. So I would say I only have 4 accounts that ever give me a headache or I have to figure out variances or things that might be missing. So I appreciate that, but there's a function for each of them, honestly.
Sure. Thanks.
Fred? You
How
wanna,
many
you wanna,
He asked how 53 accounts over how many banks, just so it's on the
yeah,
record.
thanks.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 banks.
Thanks.
Yep.
How many boxes do you think?
We have our online, so we have 1 mail-in lockbox, and then we have our online payments. So we have 2 separate reports that we get daily for the prior day's work. Yeah. One's for electronic payments, and then one's for mail-in payments.
Any other questions from anybody?
Just maybe one last one. One of the first comments you made was the fact that you shop around, for
Mhm.
CDs, the best interest rates in the
Yeah.
banks. You used the term you negotiate with the banks.
Really?
Is that the towns actually have that much power to be able to negotiate with a bank? For instance, if I walk in off the street, I'm pretty much
Yeah.
looking at what they have on the side of the counter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Municipal banking is often based on the balance of what you have in the account.
Okay.
And so for our lock boxes, we get a great rate from them because we usually sit a lot of money in their accounts, so they want our money.
Oh.
And they're very competitive. And if I say, hey, look at this is creeping up, they'll talk with their board and then get back to me and say, hey, I'll bump you up to X or what
So it's
have
the
you.
power of your balance.
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Every month, Mayor posts to our SharePoint site and sends me an email that, hey, I've reconciled the accounts.
Mhm.
And not every single month, but most months I'll go and I'll take a look at it, review the activity, the reconciliations, just as a spot check. But the other thing I look for is the balances in these banks. 'Cause that's an overriding concern ultimately is, the FDIC protection per bank. But some of the reasons you might have reduced interest is perhaps there could be, well, back in the day, there used to be a DIF insurance with Cape Cod 5, and they've moved away from that and they've gone to, what do they call that? I forget what they call it, but
I'd
they,
like to talk about it, actually.
but they actually take the money out of anything over 250 at Cape Cod 5
Oh, it's
and
the-
send it out to other banks through
It's
a,
called
It's for
IntraFi.
the FDIC issue.
So it's called IntraFi, and what they do is so we have the bulk of our
More
mail-in
than-
lockbox, $14 million with a company, and what they do is they use IntraFi, and so they send $250,000 to different branches so our money is protected.
in order to get coverage.
Yes,
Different
Yeah.
Banks.
different banks. So banks all over the country.
Okay,
So-
I didn't know that was a service. That's interesting.
But that service comes at a cost, so I think you're sitting on a lot of money. You could get a better rate if you didn't do that and invested it in a CD, but now you've got exposure, right? And
Right,
so,
right.
it's a balancing act. And what do you want to get for a rate of return versus our primary purpose here is to make sure the taxpayers don't lose anything,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Security,
Um,
biggest
So,
concern, yeah.
so I don't know that we talk about, you and I talk about that enough or a lot, but that's one of the things I do when I go and look at her monthly reconciliations. It's always in the back of my mind is how we're doing this, and the Interfi is a great tool for that. But it's also using multiple banks and
And
there's
three of
collateral.
our banks use that. 3 of our banks with the majority of our money use that, so.
And
This
I think
thing
if
is-
I get paid, they get a couple of points on basis points or something.
Through the banks that use them, yes, so
Okay.
they reduce our interest by maybe 0.25 or something or whatever, I'm not really sure, I don't have the workings of that.
That they get a piece from us and a piece. Of
No, they get the piece.
The banks
is-
pay Interfi.
Yeah, is paying.
But the way they make up for it is by
Is
offering
reduce
us a
ours
lower
slightly.
interest rate.
So instead of 4%, you might get 3.75.
Or you could ask,
3.85, yeah,
or you could not do Interfi, you could ask the bank for a collateralization agreement, which they'll happily give to you. But they're gonna offer you a lower, they're not gonna charge you money for it, but they're gonna give you less interest.
exactly.
They'll make their money
Somehow.
one way or another.
One way or another.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions, comments, etc.? Thank you very much for coming.
Oh, well, thank
And
you
it
for
was
having
very,
me.
very
No, it was
interesting
really
and
nice speaking
yeah,
with you
yeah,
all.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you and thanks for the question.
Yeah, no,
I'm gonna take off then, thank you.
You don't want to stay for the whole time.
I really don't. I might go
She's
swimming.
honest, I like that.
I might go swimming, that's why I live in Easton.
So I just want, thanks, Mayor.
Take care.
Mayor, I just want to mention, this. This is a new thing for us this year. I mean, we've been talking about it, so I put on your monthly calendar of events, right?
Mhm.
Each finance division coming in front of you throughout the year, so. This is a good time for Maya, the treasurer, because taxes are pretty much collected and
Right,
it's done
right.
any. tax
Good time of
work.
the year for her.
Next month we'll have, I think we have IT coming in.
Mhm.
And I know, Tom, you have good questions over the, last year or so on that, so it'll give you a little bit more flesh on that, those answers. And then, in the fall, we'll do accounting. I might end up doing the accounting, but, and then we have,
You're the
Assessor.
assessor committee.
Assessor, yeah, Colleen.
that's usually, I think that's in the winter, probably be around the residential tax exemption discussions, probably not a bad time, so.
Yeah.
So just trying to get you guys information how the whole financial operation works. And
Yeah, it's a good idea.
every once in a while, you know who's handling all the money doing.
Well, it's nice to be able to put a face with a name too.
Yeah, yeah. Good for her to see us and for us to see
Well, it's a
her.
good opportunity, right? And I like the idea of giving, people that are responsible for serious stuff. Some face time and some exposure and the experience to get out in front of people.
Thanks, Richard.
I'm gonna go onto the agenda for number 4, and I'm going to ask Rich. I didn't see anything as far as the transfers, and I know that needs to be done by the 15th, so
Yeah.
we were talking about having something maybe later on.
Yeah, I don't-
When you've got the
I looks like
information.
I should have probably planned this out a little bit better, so I apologize. But there's a statutory requirement that we get things approved by July 15th.
Right,
And perhaps we could have a meeting with just this item. It could be probably be a Zoom meeting. I have a list of transfers. It's just that I'd rather give you the real numbers and not a estimated number.
Yeah, yeah.
But let me go through what I got and you can decide how you want to do it. But we will need to have a meeting because there is one transfer that we can't
the
do.
family support
Is
package.
for the family support. And so if you got to do that anyway,
Yeah,
maybe just.
Do-
My
do
idea
everything.
was, after next week, we get all the final bills and I know
Yeah,
the
yeah.
exact amounts. I can write a memo, have the exact amounts and we could just vote that
Mm-hmm.
memo and it'd be done. But what we have going, just to keep you heads up, I don't think some of these are a surprise. A couple are, one was a surprise to me. But our retirement assessment was under budgeted, or not under budgeted, it was budgeted what we were told to assess, but the actual assessment came in $7,628 higher. It's from the Barnstable,
7,600.
$28. Yeah. And the Barnstable County Retirement system.
How much was the total assessment? 7,000 more, you said,
Yeah,
7,000,
7,000.
out of total bill.
couple million.
Okay.
We got I decided to charge it to the Building Inspectional Services Department. For lack of a better place to put this, but we got a new bill that should have recalled, but, the state took over the sealer of weights and measures duties for Cape Cod a couple of years ago. And, being the state, they neglected to send out bills. And so I just got a bill for $5,546. The town of Barnstable used to do that for everybody on the Cape. And they stopped doing that a couple years ago, and the state, instead of every town having the contract with a service, or the state took it over. So that's the person that goes around to all the gas stations and
Mm.
see their
Check to
stickers,
make sure that you're actually getting a
scales
gallon.
at markets and things like that. So that was an assessment from the state, 5,546, and it's gonna
2 years,
just for the year.
just for one.
So that'll be a new item in the budget next time. And then I'm gonna work this year's budget, starting July 1. We'll make sure we make some savings elsewhere to cover.
So we did budget.
Now, the big one is the school.
Yeah, that's one of my,
Last I'd heard, I was told to have 106,000 available. And they're hoping to do better. And I will be following up with Bill and Giovanna by the end of this week. See where they stand.
that has been really bothering me. It's been back and forth. It was, at one point it was even higher than that, and then it went down, and then it went, the last meeting I went to, it was back up to 105, and then I saw 46.
Well, again, it's well, I'm gonna, you already had this conversation, we're gonna have it again. It's one thing to, and I think what you might be seeing or hearing from them is the 106 is probably the extra cost,
Mhm. Oh, this
and
is,
that's all well and good, but if you have savings in other line items,
oh, yeah,
you ought to keep that savings and don't spend them on other things that you don't necessarily are discretionary, and take that savings to offset that cost.
right.
So I'm hoping it comes in, I think 106 is the actual cost, but I'm hoping it's something less.
That they've got some savings other places to reduce it.
So that's, the big one we've all been tracking on that. And I think you had asked me, Mary, someone had asked me. So I did talk to Bill. That is 3 specific students. One is an outplacement to an off-Cape school.
We're talking about special ed.
Mhm.
This is, I guess.
And so we have to pick up the 100% cost, well, all of them, but the big one is the third student. These are new students to the district that came mid-year. But the big cost is the person going to the private school, and you gotta pay for the cost of that, and you have to pay for the transportation. And so that's really the nature of the
Mhm.
overage. Then
Okay.
finally,
Excuse me, at some point, can we talk about how to take care of that cost going forward? I know we've had a couple of discussions on it, and I really, because it's not going to go away.
well, we did, and what you'll see this year in the budget process, hopefully. I don't think this is a 1-year issue, but
Yeah, right.
for sake of argument, say we did the override partly because of this need.
Right.
Let's say it goes away next year and we no longer have that need, yet we
Oh.
had the override for that money.
Oh,
So the plan to deal with that is not to take that money and use it for something else.
no, yeah,
It's to keep it at the school,
Mhm.
not necessarily at the school, but
keep it,
Accrue it.
allocate to the school, so to speak, but put it in a special education
Right.
stabilization fund.
right,
So, we had to appropriate an extra, like, I think it was 400 grand or something like that this year for the schools for special education. If next year that amount needs to be 0,
mhm,
you should hear from me that we're gonna put 400,000 to a special education stabilization fund.
right,
And I want to keep it at the town.
Yeah.
The schools, districts especially, want it on there till there's no need for us to send it to them, just to have to take it back.
mhm.
So,
Do you have the fund established already?
no.
No,
But it would be part of a town meeting warrant vote, establish fund, put in X number of dollars.
So you have to go to town meeting next year to ask for approval to do that, Rich?
Yeah, and if they didn't, then we could decide it to the regular stabilization.
No,
fund.
I got it, yeah. Yeah, cause I remember last time I asked you, there's no limit to the number of stabilization funds you can have at a time, right? Cause I know you brought up this whole idea of doing just this.
The worst case scenario, if you don't vote anything, which I, theoretically could happen, but I don't think it would, but. You could also just not appropriate it, right? You could have
Yeah.
what's called excess levy capacity, you have X amount of dollars available to you, but you spend $400,000 less.
Yeah.
Because we want to preserve that for special education. So there's lots of ways to approach it. The key here is we want to try to steward those funds that were part of that override for special education, and if those costs go away, maintain a level funding of that. So when we do have those, we have a kitty to get through. Because we're talking about the elementary school, so usually that's at most a 2-year problem, perhaps a 3-year problem. If you have a student going through the system.
Depending upon what grade they're in currently. Because obviously if they're in the elementary school, the problem is going to go into the middle school.
But I wouldn't call it the problem, but the issue,
Well,
the cost would go into
Cost.
the middle school budget, which is
Yeah, yeah.
apportioned amongst the district.
right. Yeah. Okay, and what else do you have?
And then finally, I don't know the magnitude of it. It was upwards up to 30, but I'm whittling it down on the transfer station.
Mm.
Transportation and hauling and disposal,
Mhm.
tipping charges. I'm not sure, and that's part of what I want to find out, but I think it's probably a matter of volume. We know what the rate is. We have a contract and we budget at that rate, but you can only budget so much volume. So at the end of the year, people are cleaning up, doing stuff at their house. Non-residents are coming back, cleaning up. That was a little bit of a spike in volume is my suspicion. So it was upwards of 30,000, but we're getting the final bills. It ought to be quite a bit less than that. And that's also an area where we had, I think I explained this to you last time, where we issue purchase orders against accounts so that we reserve money
Mm.
for purposes that we know are going to happen. There's a number of purchase orders that aren't going to be fully spent, so we can liquidate that, which will reduce that 30,000. But that'll be, probably in the $10,000 to $15,000 range of a request.
Well, we have 200,000 in the reserve fund, so.
Right.
So based on what you've just talked about, we have enough money
Oh, yeah.
to take care of it.
I'd consider it relatively negligible, other than the transfer station might be a little bit bigger, but the other things are pretty, what I would expect a reserve fund to be used for, and then the big one's the school. And then the final thing, which wouldn't be a reserve fund, so the reserve fund is just your vote, and that's why I try to keep you guys updated as we go, so you know what to expect. And if everyone were to tell me that they have a problem with it, then I'd have to figure out a different path. So, unless I hear that, I'm assuming that you'll vote for these things. But then the other thing that's a little bit different is the family support package.
Right.
I just want to talk about that for a minute, because that's not a reserve fund. That's I forget the chapter and section of the law, but that's a provision of the general laws that in the last 2 months of the fiscal year, the finance committee with a vote, concurrence of the select board, so both boards vote,
Mhm.
can transfer money between accounts. And so we had this whole rigmarole of how to set up the family support package and account for those monies. And lawyers had all these brilliant ideas that were really kind of a pain in the butt. So my simplistic pragmatic idea was, why don't we just take this vote at the end of the year, get the select board and the finance committee to vote to transfer the annual operating budget money, the 490,000 that's budgeted every year, that was subject of an override a few years ago, that's unspent during that year, and transfer it to the family support package article accounts. And those articles.
So you're not separating it out between the housing and the.
No, we do,
Oh.
but the 490 is part of the annual operating budget,
Right,
and
right,
normally annual
right.
operating budgets, if they're unspent, those savings close back to the general fund and can't be used any longer at the end of the year.
Well, you're moving it over.
But moving out of the operating budget to the article fund
Right.
allows it to carry over. And so, the childcare money
Right.
is getting used pretty well.
Yeah, right.
But as you know, the school lunches have been free, so this
Right.
lunch money so there's money there, so there's unspent monies that
Mhm.
we don't want to close back to the general fund because people appropriated it for this family support package.
Right.
And that's why we asked for that transfer to the article. And it still stays and contains the nature of the family support package, but it allows us to accumulate those balances.
Mhm. So was the monies that were originally in the family support package for the food, the meals tax, I mean, not tax, meals. Are we, the town, using those monies to now provide childcare? Because we're not using it for the food.
Yeah, and I forget the exact number of the vote, but I'll probably put that in the memo just to keep everybody on track of how we're
Yeah,
doing.
yeah,
Yeah, the select board took a vote. I
right,
just can't
for
recall the amount,
childcare,
to repurpose some of that 100,000 that was for food security
right,
to the childcare. So
Right.
we weren't using it for food security.
mhm,
It wasn't all of it, but it was a portion
right,
of it.
right. And the other parts, the housing, I think that's the beach plum.
Right, so we have housing money through this year. We'll have housing money that's been partially utilized.
Mhm.
But starting FY 25, that $100,000 allocation for housing is going towards the beach plum debt service.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, so the decision, the votes need to be taken before July 15th.
Yeah,
Right.
or on July 15th.
Oh, let me, I don't know what date, July,
July
How
15th
do
is
you-
the
how do you-
Monday.
it's a Monday. How do you want to, handle the timing?
Well, it's up to you guys, I
Well,
guess.
no, I mean, when do you feel that you would be comfortable with,
Huh.
with exact numbers? That was my,
Well, next week's tough because that's the holiday. So anyway, anytime really the following week, the 8th, 9th, 10th. You know, if everyone's used to Wednesday, the 10th. Um, and that doesn't seem like right. What would be the third Wednesday of the month now?
we've been the 4th,
Fourth,
which, it's too late.
Yeah, so
It's too
normally
late.
you'd be July 24th.
Yeah,
If you want to keep it on a Wednesday, if you could do I will have a memo next week. Yeah, probably next, or beginning of, probably on the
the
8th.
10th of July.
On the 8th, I will have a memo outlining everything I just talked to you with final amounts.
Okay, so you could send something out to us on the 8th and
And
we
if
could.
Can
vote,
convene on the 10th,
10th?
perhaps.
We have to have a meeting to vote on.
Yes,
Yeah, yes,
Okay,
yeah.
can't vote like, just can't vote electronically. Okay.
so it doesn't need to be a long meeting. It could be the only item on the agenda. And it could be a Zoom meeting.
Let's see.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
Read the memo, no one changes it.
Yes, no.
Got the message.
But it's gonna say what I basically just told you all.
so we should, right now, schedule, the meeting for Wednesday, July 10th at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Is that? If that is okay with you and.
Yeah.
Feel that you will have the numbers that we will need to vote on. Okay. All righty. Any other comments or questions about the reserve fund and the year-end transfers? Thanks, Rich. I'm going on to item number 5 on the agenda. And I'm going to recommend the following. Patty is going to be replacing Joanna for the next 3 years for the, she's being appointed, has been appointed by the moderator. I've been told that Fred is going to be appointed by Scott as well to replace the final year of Russ's. And we have, Peter has been reappointed by us for the next 3 years. His term was up this year. We have one other person, Rick Knight, whose term was up this year. He's decided to not continue, and that is a select board position. And so Jerry, I've been in touch with Jerry from the select board, and he is working on that part of it. So I would like to recommend that since Patty has not been sworn in, that Fred has not been sworn in, that I'm hoping that Jerry will have somebody to take the place of Rick Knight, that it would be better to reorganize as far as chair, vice chair, and all those types of things. When we have the full complement of the committee that's going to be here for the next fiscal year. does anybody have any comments on that, or feel that we should operate in a different way?
No, I actually think that's what the charter calls for, to reorganize the first meeting of the.
The first meeting of the new fiscal year. Yeah.
So we've done it differently before.
Well, if people aren't changing, then I think that we've done it, but
And actually, under the old charter, it was different.
yeah,
So-
yeah.
So now I think we're in line with all the other committees.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to wait for the reorganization until our next meeting. And right now that next meeting is July 24th at 4 o'clock. That's our normal time, the fourth Wednesday of the month at 4. And I'm hoping that by that time, everybody will be in place. But I have two other things. Roy has been our representative on the Strategic Planning Committee. And his term is up this year, 6/30/24. He would like to be reappointed to the Strategic Planning Committee for another 3-year term. Do I have any comments, questions, discussion on reappointing Roy to the Strategic Planning Committee for another 3-year term? Do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to appoint Royce for another 3 years.
That's Tom, and that's
Second.
Russ. I'm saying Tom and I'm saying Russ.
Thanks,
Okay,
Roy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
any discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0, and you were abstaining. And I'll be in touch with the town clerk and let them know that we've done this. We also have 2 people representing the Finance Committee on the Search Committee. One of them is Dee Matfeld, and her term was up this year. And Peter, you interviewed her last time. Probably don't remember necessarily, but
Clearly,
yeah. You did it because she's a friend of mine.
right.
Anyway, she would like to be reappointed to the Search Committee for another 3-year term. Her term is up 6/30/24. Do I have any comment, discussion on reappointing Dee Matfeld to the Search Committee representing the Finance Committee? Do I have a motion to approve Dee to the Search Committee by the Finance Committee? Russ? Do I have a second? Paul? All in favor of D? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 0. And your wife Hilda resigned as of the end of 12/31/23. And she's been on the Search Committee representing the Finance Committee. And she has a 3-year term. And we need to have somebody to replace Hilda. So I'm going to be I have been in touch before, but I'll be in touch with them again to see if they have anybody that they would like to appoint or recommend, unless somebody here has somebody that they know that would like to represent the Finance Committee on the Search Committee. Okay, well, I'll be in touch with the Search Committee.
Search for the search.
I'm gonna search the Search Committee for somebody to be on the search. I don't know. Oh, dear. Okay. Does anybody have anything else to comment on as far as item number 5 on the agenda? The committee in upcoming reorg. All righty, we're on to number 6 of the agenda. That's new business. And let me see. Does anybody have anything else on old business? Peter, do you want to comment about the Nauset Regional? You sent out some information lately on the Nauset Regional School and in particular, the furniture issue. FF&E furniture was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions on what's going on with the Nauset Regional School? Either any questions or just based on the recent information that Peter sent out?
Yeah. As far as I know, the FF&E is still on budget.
That was my question, yeah.
And that's where I was earlier. Our meeting ran over, but we had a change order meeting today about all the dozens of change orders that the contractors are still looking for. So we're still fighting that battle, and one way or the other, we're going to make it to the end with the money we have to work with.
That's a contingency fund, Peter.
That's what I mean, yeah.
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 You're gonna
That
live
was
with-
all the change, that's where the money for the change orders is coming from, is that contingency fund.
Yeah, but is the commitments against that? Are we at 80%? How far into the contingency fund are we right now?
Well, that document showed it as of the, what was it? The last update. So we're, hard to know. I talked with Steve about this a lot because he's been through it a lot, and percentage wise, it looks like we're okay, but it's just the way now that we're halfway through the project or more, the way these things come in, you really pretty hard to predict. So it doesn't give you a real great feeling, but we've put everybody on notice that there's no more money where this came from. So one way or the other, we're going to get it done. And so far, no big new ones.
Yeah, actually, I have a question sort of related to this. Because with Fred joining the Finance Committee, we now have 3 people representing the Finance Committee on the Capital Projects Committee. Is that yeah,
Heavy?
yeah. Is that an issue that's been discussed at all?
I thought at one time they didn't want to have too many, Peter. Didn't we talk about that when they originally started this? And we
Yeah.
had decided on 2 from. the
Yeah,
Finance
there are
Committee?
2 from the Finance Committee.
Right.
Yeah.
Ideally, I guess that's what I think Jackie had mentioned but this kind of worked the other way around where Fred was already on the Capital Projects Committee. So I don't really see the downside. I mean, it seems like they're so similar mission in terms of looking at the money. So
I agree with you. I think things just changing the ball. I think though, Jackie's original intention was you wanted as broad base perspective
Yeah.
as you possibly can, but things evolve and go on, so. It's no
Yeah.
sense pulling people off.
it's kind of natural that people that are interested in the Finance Committee would also be interested in the Capital Projects Committee. So it's not surprising.
We don't have anything under new business. Does anybody have anything that they would like to? Steve?
You want Peter and I and Fred to talk about the last capital project meeting last week?
Sure.
Just to give everybody an update on the wastewater. We did meet with the 2 designers.
Are you talking about the intramural?
But he's talking about wastewater.
Wastewater.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's right now, there's been contracts awarded to environmental partners signed at this point, and they're going to be the OPM for both the design of the collection system as well as the plant itself. And they're also the designer for the collection system. So they've got 2 different contracts. And then GHD's got a contract in the works at this point. I think Jackie's pretty close with it. Getting that finalized, and it's not stopping them from proceeding at this point as far as the starting the design. They've already had their coordination meeting started between the two designers, so it's well underway. The design of the project is going to be pretty heavy between this
Can
summer.
you speak up just a little bit?
Sure.
Some people are having trouble down here. Sorry.
You can hear me?
Yeah, me. Yeah, I'm one of them. Yes.
So the design of the project's gonna be going from the summer through next year. There's gonna be 3 or 4 cost estimates during the process. The first one looks like it's gonna be late summer this fall, so we'll get a better handle on where the cost of the project's gonna go. We met with Ziad and Jackie from Environmental Partners, and I was impressed. They seem to be on top of it, know the job extremely well because they've been here for the water part. And Jeff from GHD seems to be very, very capable from a design standpoint. So I think they got a good team started on that at this point. And it looks like the start of the bidding would be in the beginning of 2026, first quarter. So that's kind of the time frame when this whole thing's gonna be going down, so. I would say the next 12 months will be pretty critical, number one, because trying to get the cost correct before the next town meeting next year, have a better handle on it. And I think we'll have 2 or 3 of the estimates completed at that point.
But you won't have the bids in until 9 months after that.
That's correct. It's gonna be based on budget estimates. So they own 30% estimates, they own 60% design estimates, and they own 90% design estimates in their contracts. And it looks like, from what I read in the contracts, there'll be 2 estimates on every one of them because the OPM is also going to be providing an estimate against the designers also. So then they get together and reconcile the numbers, because hopefully it works out good that way. That's usually what you want to do, is have 2 estimates. You reconcile them down to one number.
So that puts construction in 27 start?
26,
Oh, I thought the bids were coming in
early 26.
early 26, so you
Right.
expect construction to start fall or
No, spring, I think it was.
spring, okay.
Yeah,
Usually they have a 30 or 60 day
yeah,
award.
Right.
July
They
1st.
start right away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
So 2 years from now.
so you'd be.
Spring of 26. You're talking about starting a spring of 26.
Looks like July of 26.
Oh, did you say summer?
Yes.
Oh, July.
Yeah.
So are there maps relative to the areas of the town that we're targeting
Yes.
on the various days that have been updated since I think the last thing we saw was
April was the last one.
April was the last one?
Yeah. I
Are they
don't,
online?
yeah, I don't think there's gonna be changes,
There's
at
no
this point,
change.
not at
Okay.
this point that we're aware of, so,
Still looking primarily at the town hall and
right.
on the east
Well,
side.
it's, from Nauset, Cape
So-
Cod area there, the center, all the way up through,
The visitor center,
yes.
yeah. But the street by street breakdown hasn't been done yet, Steve, right?
No,
That's usually gonna come in design, that's where we
Right.
fine tune specific connections and streets.
So the maps are still kind of general.
that's it.
Any other questions?
Oh, the other thing is town hall. I guess the end date is next week at this point.
I was gonna include that in the town manager.
Okay, all right.
Have they has on the town hall, I keep looking to see whether they've painted the cupola. They haven't painted the cupola yet.
I believe they have, yeah.
Oh, it didn't look like it was painted to me.
Yeah, that was the idea.
Please talk, okay?
Sometimes I'm just sitting out there at the light.
One thing at a time.
Actually, it didn't look like it had been done to me. It doesn't look like it was new. It looks like the same.
Yeah, no.
Same color. Oh, I mean, I said color, but anyway.
Yeah, I think they repaired the fiberglass top and then painted it. Oh, sorry,
Oh, brother.
painted it the same color.
Oh, dear. I'm sorry, what somebody was,
Get old.
wait till I get old. I'm pretty old right now. Probably the oldest, one of the oldest people in this room. Anyway, so thanks, Steve. Is there anything else that anybody would like to bring up? And one of the things I would like to bring up is from the last select board meeting, the intermunicipal contract agreements that we have.
Go on to the staff updates,
Well, I'm just wondering whether we want to do that now or whether we would, since it's not on the agenda.
was part of the update, saying,
Oh,
I was gonna, under town manager report and staff updates, I was gonna.
okay, because I didn't see a town manager. I mean, did Kayla say?
No, probably didn't, but I
Oh.
can tell you.
Okay,
Anything real time.
I know stuff I can relate to.
okay. Under the town manager report, Rich will now just tell us about the interim municipal contracts.
Yeah, so last select board meeting, we gave them a briefing. We've been talking about regional dispatch for Eastham, Wellfleet, Truro, and Provincetown. Provincetown's wants to move forward. Wellfleet and Truro, we gotta keep working with. But one of the things that we needed to do was have a draft intermunicipal agreement, an IMA. We were given one from the state 911 folks that did a study for us. It wasn't, I would never have signed it myself, and it wasn't really well written and didn't cover what needed to be covered, in my opinion. So I rewrote it. Then Adam, the chief, and I went up to a regional dispatch facility in Duxbury. And all the changes that we contemplated and put into the rewrite of the IMA were spot on. He said, yeah, these are all the problems we're having on using, the sample that we were provided. And he's like, yeah, I'm glad you guys are addressing that. So what the IMA basically provides for is is heavy on the governance. So the big things that we added was to be clear that we didn't want, there are two models. One is a total separate dispatch district. It almost operates autonomously. We didn't need that. We don't need to duplicate overhead for legal, audit, administration, all this stuff. The other model is a hosted model where Eastham would run this dispatch facility and then we'd let other people join. But we're calling all the shots and they just got to pay what we tell them to pay. And that wasn't going to work either. So what we ended up crafting was a kind of a hybrid model. And so the IMA kind of delineates governance, the key of which is a board of managers made up of the town managers of each participant that adopt budgets, have certain authority and certain things they have to do, mainly adopting budget, appointing the director of the center, the dispatch center, being the hiring and firing authority of employees, creation of a operations committee, which is the chiefs of each of the participants, so that they can work with the center director and staff to establish policies and procedures and make sure each participant's getting what they need. Establishing an enterprise fund at the town of Eastham to account for all the costs. And which would include indirect costs. So like I said, we didn't want to duplicate extra insurance or an extra HR and an extra IT person. We would contribute that, but we would have a administrative services agreement to compensate us, to repay us back out of that enterprise fund. And then the big thing that we did decide is, it's kind of crazy. Every town has one dispatcher on duty. Mostly, sometimes it might be extra, but it's scheduled and staffed to have each town between here and Provincetown has one dispatcher on duty in their town for their calls. If you're going to combine that, and just for sake of argument, say you're going to have 4 dispatchers in one center at one time, why would you apportion the costs anything other than equal? Right? And so that's what we did. There was all kinds of crazy formulas based on call volume, and call volume is easily manipulated and subjective, and all qualities of calls aren't the same. And ability, time to staff a call or handle a call are different. So we just didn't like that. And since we're all coming to the table with one dispatcher each on each shift, made sense that we're just going to split this cost, and we're going to have an assessment. We have a budget, and we'll apportion that out to each town accordingly. So anyway, that's the meat and potatoes of the IMA. We sent it off to Provincetown. They're busy with some issues I think they're handling, but we'll get back to them soon. In the meantime, I'm glad we finalized the draft of the IMA. We were able to send it off to the state 911 commission. And because of that, just received word this week that we got awarded a $400,000 design grant.
Mm.
Which hopefully will be enough. If we have to design a dispatch facility at the police station, that gets a little complicated, and 400,000 probably isn't enough. But Adam and I, in working with Paul Lag, we're looking at the south end of the Old Orchard Road parcel where the DPW and transfer station is, south of the capped landfill. There's some space there, and we think that might be suitable because we don't need a huge facility. Probably 4,000 or 5,000 square feet. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. So hopefully that design money can design something that might fit on that parcel, or, we're still looking at other options too, but, and the deal is since they're awarding you this grant, they're wanting you to do this. So once they do the design, they're likely to award you, it's 100% construction money. And the benefit of doing it as a standalone facility as opposed to a add-on to the
Add
police
To the police.
is you avoid a lot of the nitpicking that goes back. Well, that's really a police addition, not a dispatch, so, it makes it, if we can pull off and finding a good location for a standalone facility, it seems like that's probably the way to go. The chiefs have, police chiefs particularly have issues, it's called the dark station issue. No one's in the station if all your dispatchers are out. But there's technology we can put in place that accommodate those things now. So that's less of an issue than it ever used to be. But if we get the design's approved by state 911, then we get 100% grant reimbursement for construction. And then we definitely, we have to have another community signed up before they let us spend this money though. So, Provincetown right now is our best or most likely participant. And then it's just a matter of talking with other communities, would they like to join as well?
Do we need to have Truro and Wellfleet?
No,
Okay.
just one other.
So we could do it with us and Provincetown
Mhm.
without including Wellfleet and Truro.
Right.
When is there a time period that we need to get, meet in order to receive the 400,000?
I'm sure, and I haven't gotten delved into the grant yet.
Okay.
But they won't let us spend the money or
Oh,
commit it
yeah, yeah.
until we've got someone signed up.
Yeah, yeah.
Once we get through that whole process of designing and constructing facility, then it's 100% reimbursement for the first year of operation,
Mm,
and 75 and 50
Yeah,
then
yeah,
25.
Reduced 25%, yeah.
And
Is
then,
that state grant,
yes.
state, just general fund?
Yeah.
Well,
And the other thing is, like I think you've heard me say before, regionalization doesn't always save money, and I would imagine operationally, it probably isn't gonna save us money, because they're gonna want us to improve the service. They're gonna wanna have supervision at a minimum. So just for sake of argument, if all 4 towns joined and we took our 4 dispatches among all of us and put them in one center, well, the state's gonna want, as part of that operation, a supervisory type of person, right? So that alone would be extra cost, but we've got 4 years of some subsidy, right? We also would then qualify potentially there's an annual state 911 grant, training grant that we get. We potentially qualify for more. But the big thing is really going to be capital, because every single town between here and Provincetown needs to invest. I think we're all on what's called IMC software, and that's being phased out. And that's several $100,000 replacement and implementation. And to do that 4 times is, kind of crazy if we can do it once and have the state pay for it. So it probably will cost us a little bit more money short term, except that we're getting subsidy. But we'll save on the capital. And once I get further along, we'll do some sort of analysis on that. In longer term, I think with the status quo, it might cost us more money, but absent, if we maintain the status quo, I think at least Eastham and probably Provincetown would have to do something different, which would end up costing us more money, because it's not really a sustainable model. We're relying on 5 people to fill 24-hour coverage 7 days a week.
Won't work. Why wouldn't Wellfleet and Truro want to become part of the plan?
I think we need to engage them more. And, public safety chiefs are typically
They don't want.
reticent for, a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
change. Wellfleet in particular, is a little bit different. They're dispatched by the sheriff's office for the fire department.
Mm.
So there's other options. But the sheriff's office, as far as we understood it, does not have capacity and not planning on having capacity. Although since we got this grant, we've heard from them.
Yeah.
So Adam and I will go try to meet with them, do our due diligence, make sure there's not a better alternative out there, and that'll be part of our analysis. But that has pros and cons, money aside, that has pros and cons. My biggest concern on something like that is sheriff's offices are funded through the state and they're elected positions. And so if you get caught in the middle of a political situation, not that that's happened recently, that doesn't mean it won't, right? And so, if the plan is for the sheriff's offices on the base up Cape and Sandwich is where they're located. If that was the regional dispatch facility for the whole Cape, which it isn't, but because Barnstable, Yarmouth, and Sandwich are doing their own regional site too. If it were, do you like that model, right? You got all your eggs in one basket for the whole region. I kind of like the sub-regional model, tentatively as I think it out. Same in Adam and Dan Keene believe the same thing is, sub-regional model is a little bit better, gives you some redundancy and, if your dispatch center goes down because if you get hit by the big one, you can just roll it over to the mid-Cape one that Barnstable is hosting, right? And if they get wiped out, they can go to, Plymouth or whatever. So that's what's happening there.
Richard, just on that question, one thing you said was, you talked about the costing, just trying to split it 4 ways in a number of towns, right? You said that each town would have dispatchers in there. Does each town plan to have a dispatcher on every shift, or would they rotate the shifts around?
No, it would be, so the idea is the regional facility that
Yeah.
dispatches a calls for all 4 towns, and all the dispatchers are in the one center.
Yeah,
And they become town of Eastham employees since we're the host.
Yep.
But in the enterprise fund,
Right.
but governed by a regional dispatch
Got
center director.
but you don't have to have 4 people on every shift, each, one from each town, right?
Well, probably,
Probably, okay, so that's what I didn't know if,
yeah.
okay, yeah,
That's part of we gotta,
you gotta,
and that's more up the alley of, the police chiefs. That's why we have an operations committee. What's the ultimate staffing? We got 4 individually now, we got a total of 4, right? Can you
Right.
do it with 3?
Yeah.
And maybe you can at nights for 9 months of the year.
Mhm.
But in the summer you need 4, right?
yeah, during the day, right? Peak
So we don't, that's gonna be hard to know, I think, until you actually,
Got it, okay,
Yeah.
so you haven't decided, that's fine, thanks.
And
well,
then the other one is the ones on the schools.
yep. So we also have an IMA via Brewster. To be the host community for a regional school study. It costs $200,000 and our contribution is 25,000, which I just actually checked for Jackie today. We have, she has a consultancy line that has unspent money for this year, so we're gonna encumber this year's money to pay for that IMA. It's basically analyzing the data related to the middle school and elementary schools. And Brewster's basically gonna run that contract with vendors. We're just contributing financially.
So I know Brewster passed 100,000 in their warrant, this past warrant. And 50,000, they're talking about 50,000 from Orleans. I don't,
Mhm.
I didn't look at the warrant, the Orleans warrant. And 25,000 from us and 25,000 from Wellfleet
That's it.
for the 200,000.
Yeah.
And where did you say the 25,000 from us?
Jackie has a consultancy line,
A what line?
consultancy
Oh,
In her
yeah,
budget?
consultant
is
line.
for these types of things.
Yeah,
We don't always spend it, but it's like one of
Yeah,
those
yeah,
things that
yeah.
we budget for in the event that we need
Yeah,
it. And
yeah,
here's an
yeah.
example.
I
if we need it.
remember, I remember
I mean,
discussing.
we always need something, but it's usually a smaller order of magnitude.
So what's the status of that?
The school one,
Yeah,
everyone's just signing them now and Brewster's gonna have to figure out who they're gonna hire.
oh,
You're gonna have
okay.
to go out to bid and get, I have no idea who they. It does
Wait.
require an RFP process, so
Yeah. So Wellfleet has agreed to the 25?
I think everyone's agreed, yeah.
Everyone's agreed? Okay. Righty.
Other news, Steve already mentioned the town hall project's supposed to be wrapped up by the end of next week. That still seems ambitious to me, but
Sure does.
it's coming along finally. You may have seen at the last select board meeting, they approved charging for the EV charging stations, which was been a additional cost to us on the implementation of the program. So the idea is now that these rates will recover the operational costs and some maintenance, but probably not the ultimate replacement. But the idea is if we have to replace them or do more, that we can get grants for those still. So, but at least we're recovering the $10,000 a year, what's been costing us an extra utility cost. And then finally, Dan Keene, our fire chief, is retiring September 6th. And I think Jackie just announced it today, so I'm not talking out of school, that Lisa Albino
No,
will be our our next fire chief.
Already posted on social media.
And then in the next week or two, we will be starting a recruitment for a deputy fire chief. So it'll be, internal and external applicants. So,
very good. Thank you. You have a
Just
question?
one quick, any news in the community fund?
I forget what I told you last time,
It's
but
passed, it hasn't?
no, it passed the Senate with changes that I asked the select board to vote. So once that happens, has to go back to the House to accept those changes. So actually, I meant to email the House, Sarah Peak's aide today, which I didn't, so I'll have to do that tonight and see if there's anything further we need to do, but it's,
30 days, right?
slow progress.
July 31st.
If it passes, it'll probably be, that just before midnight of the last day, I'm sure.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Whatever. Okay, we are now down to the end, folks. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that on July 10th at 4 o'clock. So I'm gonna ask Mara to make sure we have a room. For July 10th at 4 o'clock for the reserves and the transfers. And our next meeting is July 24th at 4 o'clock. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Russ,
Second.
Roy? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, okay. Thank you very much. It is 5:37 or something like that.